Hello, my name is Nathaniel Gavronski, and a lot of you will probably have seen me at a lot of the different events around the state of Iowa during the build up to the Iowa caucuses taking place today, February 3rd. Now, the reason why I did this is I work a lot in constituent services, and there's a lot of people who have a lot of concerns and things that they want to address to these political candidates. However, none of them have the money to make it to these events, and almost none of them have an apartment or a house suitable enough to host a house party or event where they bring them to their houses to talk to people about different issues. So I would travel in their stead, and I would bring these issues up to the candidates. And I have been doing a lot of the videos on why certain campaigns had not worked, and I took the funneling of them falling out in rapid succession prevented me from completing that. But it doesn't really matter, because the reason why those specific individuals were not able to maintain a hold here in Iowa is basically because we have an unprecedented number of candidates that started off with, and that shiny object in the room kind of faded from a lot of them very, very quickly, and the media was very, very, very quick to pick which ones they wanted to focus on, because, well, they had to be completely honest. And it made who would normally be very viable candidates non-viable very quickly, as far as the concerns were of most of the electric people who are going to go see these people. And so if you can't build up the momentum, and it's based on things outside of the state to determine if you were going to be on the debate stage or participating in media events, it's very, very hard, because they didn't base it off of necessarily how much fundraising you had in Iowa, but nationwide, and you had to have such a polling amount in Iowa to qualify. But if you weren't able to really get your message out, because the media wouldn't really let you talk and focus on other people more specifically, you're not going to be able to get a lot of media attention and drive up your numbers. And the thing about this cycle has been primarily that the lurch to the left by Bernie Sanders, that has really brought everyone with him, has made a lot of the candidates pretty much the same carbon copy of each other on policy issues, and that's the only really changes were how they're going to implement some of those issues. Now, you have some differences with some of the candidates that are distinctly different from the other ones, but those distinguishments are very, very few and far between. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the background of each of these candidates, and then my personal experience with all of them. Again, the reason why I'm doing this is that there's a lot of people in Iowa that couldn't make it to any of these events, had questions, had concerns, and really want to know what these people are like, because if they're going to vote for them, they want to vote for someone that they know with. This is not going to be an endorsement. Full disclosure, I'm not voting for absolutely any of these people in the Iowa caucuses. And the reason why I'm not voting for them is going to be omitted from this video, because that's not the point. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit about the backgrounds. The backgrounds are really, really simple. With Sanders, Warren, Buttigieg, and Klobuchar, Yang, those guys all have this Medicare for all idea. And basically, they're going to expand Medicare, because currently Medicare only pays 80% of their Medicare approved amount, which leaves the patient remaining with a 20% remainder that private insurance companies as a supplemental would cover. Medicare also doesn't cover vision, dental, or hearing aids. So those would have to be expanded, because unless you have Medicare Advantage plans or a private insurance company who covers the difference, you don't have those options with the Medicare program. I'm CMS certified, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, so I know a lot about what I'm talking about. I worked for them back in 2007, 8, and 9. So I went through extensive training, and I keep up on all the changes that happen every year. Now, with the expansion, another thing they're going to have to be able to do is they're going to have to very quickly, rapidly expand the amount of money paid out to providers. Because currently the Medicaid and Medicare systems do not fully cover the actual costs of medical services, either fee for service or durable medical equipment. And that's the reason why a lot of private insurance companies or those patients on those private insurance companies are being charged so much more for services, as they're trying to compensate for the differences from the government insured population. Now, Basically, the Medicare for All rolls out in two different ways. They want to slowly expand the eligibility for one. So it's right now you start getting it at 55, and then it'd be like into a public option to where you would, if you wanted it, you could buy into it. Now, the idea is that eventually everyone would want this, and so you wouldn't want the private insurance companies, and so they would eventually just kind of fade away. Buttigieg talks more about how they're going to slowly have this roll out, and how the private insurance company would be faded away, whereas Sanders is more straight on, we're going to do this very, very quickly, and we're going to get everyone enrolled in this, and there's not going to be a choice really at all. Buttigieg does kind of give them a choice. Now with Biden, he doesn't have a Medicare for All plan. He wants to expand the ACA, what normally is called as Obamacare, and he wants to actually expand it, bring back the tax punishments for people who are not using or paying into the system. And that's a distinguishment between the candidates, between Biden and the rest of the field, versus the single-payer healthcare system. Now, how Sanders wants to pay for this, what you do when you go to one of his events, he would ask people to raise their hands and explain what and how much they're paying for health coverage. Now, the amount of the money some of these families are paying is kind of absolute. A word I'm not sure I could pronounce properly, but it's a large amount. An amount that I don't think these families can really afford, even if they are somewhat well off financially. And he breaks down that the percentage of their income that they're paying out for prescriptions and for the insurance itself is quite substantial. What he doesn't talk about is that, yes, you do have large premiums and you have large deductibles, but a lot of people don't actually fulfill the need to complete paying off the deductible every year. Some families do, but a lot of families pay the premiums, and the premium and the deductible ratio are inverse. So the higher premiums you pay, the lower your deductible will be. So the lower premiums you pay, the higher your deductible will be. So there is an equation kind of there to give people a choice in how they want to do those policies. But with basically, when you talk about how much you're paying for the care now, his plan is to do this. You're going to take $29,000 of income. That is basically exempt. Once you surpass $29,000 of income, you'll pay 4% of that additional income into the single-payer system. Now, from that, with the average income of an American family, he believes that that amount will equal somewhere between $1,200 and $2,000 per family for medical expenses. Now, with the drug prescription plans, his idea is to cap the amount of money any one person pays to $200 a month. Now, this would be a substantial amount of savings for each individual families that would be paying into the system. But we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with the cost that these drug manufacturers and companies do incur, that they have been having Americans pay for, and providing cheap health care to other countries that without it they wouldn't be able to cover it. I don't think that's fair that the American taxpayers and Americans are paying for literally everyone else's health care. But if we didn't, there's a lot of other countries that get a lot sicker really fast. So there's going to be kind of a balancing act of how we want to do this. But it is true that Americans pay way too much for medical costs and for drug prescriptions than anywhere else in the world, and we do need to address that. But like I said, I'm just trying to give you what their plans are. So the problem I see with the Biden, the Bernie Sanders plan, is a lot of people who would be utilizing these healthcare plans are people who wouldn't be paying into the system really anything. The reason why this is that the gig economy is all 1099, not W-2'd. And with the 1099, you can literally write off all your expenditures, so you make negative money every year. So not only would you not make the $29,000, you would make zero economically. So you would never be paying into these healthcare scenarios, but you would be utilizing most of its services. Now, a large segment of the economy is actually based on the gig economy, and some of those are actually really well paid. For an example, the big box store liquidators. So you see like a Kmart or a Sears that are closing down. There's a liquidation consultant that travels around to each of these stores. Now this person is paid around 1099, which means they are a private contractor. They are not an employee. Now this person is responsible for liquidating out $4 million of merchandise in 90 days, and then selling all of the shelving and stuff inside the store, equating to about $70,000 to $120,000 additional to the merchandise inside the store. This individual gets paid a couple of $100,000 a year, all on 1099s, and it's done for each single job as a separate one, so it's not surpassing any limits or anything like that. And they can literally write off all of their expenditures, their mileage, their hotels, their food, anything. You can write it all off. So they're never going to pay into any taxes, but they are going to be able to put a lot of money aside for their own savings. But with these types of employment opportunities, they don't typically offer insurance. So they would just pack on to the government insurance plan and never contribute to it in any way, shape, or form. And this is a big problem with how the Sanders plan is going to operate. And I've tried to talk to him about how he was going to avoid this type of problem, and he never really had an answer for me. Like I said, I would go to these events and ask these specific questions and bring these things up to their staff. And this was something that was never brought up for an answer. Now, with the solution that the rest of them kind of have, which is just basically repeal the tax cuts by the Trump administration and then increase taxes upon literally everything to pay for this. Now, the taxes are basically set more towards the higher wage earners. The thing is, though, is that they're the ones really paying any of the taxes at all. A lot of people in the United States don't pay any taxes. If you get a refund in your taxes, means that you probably really didn't pay that much. There's a lot of people out there that have to pay in every year. They're the ones actually paying taxes. So the majority of people who are getting those refunds really aren't paying taxes then at all. A minimal amount, but really insignificant. So whenever they increase the taxes on anyone or decrease the taxes, it's not going to help the people at the bottom because they're not really paying taxes to begin with. Again, I'm trying to educate people. I want people to understand how this works, because you can't make a good decision on who's a better candidate without knowing kind of how the policies work and how it's going to affect people. Now, the higher the wage earners are typically also ones who are much more involved in how to get around taxes and how to protect assets from taxes. The Warren plan, which was kind of proposed also by AOC out of New York, was that after a certain level of income, that beyond that you were going to be getting paid, you're going to be paying in 2 cents or 70%. Sanders has what they call the 99.8% tax on estates, which is money being transferred from one generation to another or to a third, 2 generations down. All of this tax is an exorbitant amount. With the Warren 2 cent tax above 50 millions. The thing is that includes the entire family wealth, and so like if you have generational income that your family has put together over generations over 50 million, you're all going to be taxed on that. And so what these families are going to do, and what they already do in many other places, they open up what they call LLCs. An LLC is a limited liability company, and what this does, it allows an individual to incorporate themselves, essentially making all their assets not their assets. The assets are put into a separate entity that they just manage, so it's no longer the asset of that individual household. And you don't even have to move it overseas. You can do it right here in the United States. It costs about $50 at any lawyer to convert even your or my assets into an LLC, and you would be responsible for paying taxes. However, an LLC is simply a corporate entity, and with that you are able to deduct losses. And what a lot of people do is they will put what they call a poison pill into each of these LLCs, making the LLC worth less on paper than its actual physical amount. And also the mark-to-market values of any property can be basically based on whatever you say they are. So you can deduct values in an LLC on property and all kinds of things that don't really reflect the actual market value of those assets. And so you're able to really avoid any of this stuff at quite large amounts of money to say, well, it's not worth anything, because a lot of assets are, they're not so quickly liquidated. So you can say they are whatever you say they are as far as their worth is concerned, and you would be able to easily avoid Senator Warren's 2-cent tax on any assets above 50 million. And the farther you go up on this spectrum, the more cents you're supposed to be paying in, and you could write it all off and put it in an LLC and never have to pay anything. The fact of the matter is, a lot of these rich people do pay an absorbent amount of taxes, and at a certain point they're okay with it. Once you get a certain point, they just flee the country, which you have to build a wall to keep them in, or you're going to have to eliminate all these the LLCs and the states and the gig, the 1099s. However, you need to understand something. If you get rid of the LLCs, like McDonald's, there's an LLC. The hotel I'm in right now, it's an LLC. The car dealerships, they're LLCs. Basically, anyone who wants to start their own business from the ground up has to create an LLC. You would prevent and stop and cease all innovation as far as creativity and business creation and new jobs by eliminating the LLCs. As far as being able to roll your assets in there, you would devastate that huge aspects of the economy. As far as getting rid of the gig economy and getting rid of the 1099s, a lot of companies, a lot of corporations would just not hire these people to begin with. They would restructure it in a way that would suit them. It's just how people work. It can be unfortunate for some of these issues that we do need to address, but I believe there's a smarter way of doing it. And all they're going to do is not hire them. They're not going to be employees. They're not going to be contractors, and they're not going to pay them the job at all. So you're not only are they not going to be paying income taxes, but they're not going to be paying sales tax on anything either. So I want you to really think about those two policies and those two individual things when you think about how you want to vote for this caucus, who you want to support in the caucuses. And for people in New Hampshire and Nevada and South Carolina and Super Tuesday, who you want to vote, I want you to take this up into consideration. Next thing I want to talk about is immigration. Now, all of them are really, really supportive of immigration. They want to have, they don't want open borders. I don't know of anyone who's actually said they support complete open borders. In fact, Bernie Sanders in 2015 with a Vox interview talked about how he distinctly did not want open borders. Okay. He doesn't want to do it. He thinks it's a bad idea. He supports the idea of a nation state. So you can't say that he's a open borders type of person. It's just not accurate. But they do want to stop doing all these things, that many of which actually started under the Biden administration, as far as separating families and keeping them detained for long periods of time. This is and was all orchestrated by the Obama administration. It's been continued under the Trump administration only as a primary means of deterrent for people not wanting to come into the country illegally, because, like, I'll quote Yellow Wolf, how much can I give if I give till it's gone? I mean, the United States is only actually able to take in so many people within a certain amount of time, and there's even international laws preventing the U.S. from repatriating a lot of these people, because the countries they came from can't only take so many people in at a time as well. So we're going to have to figure out a way of dealing with this, and the plan for the Democrats as of now is to reunite all the families. A lot of them want to get rid of the third safe country, like when they're coming through here, and instead of staying in Mexico, they should be able to come straight to the United States. And they say that's according to international law, which is not accurate. International law is actually the first safe country they come into contact with, which for most of them is Mexico, which is not yet a failed state, is a safe country and a safe haven, and that's where they're supposed to apply for asylum. They can apply for asylum in the U.S. embassies in their home countries, or the embassies of Russia, the embassies of China, the embassies of Japan, the embassies of Saudi Arabia, the embassies of Egypt, anywhere they want to go. There is a process of doing that. Assange did that in England. Snowden did that in Russia. He also did that in China. He went to an embassy and got a temporary asylum. So this is how international law works on that. They're traveling from they're going across, in some cases, 3 or 4 countries to get to the United States. That's not in accordance to international law on refugees and asylum. So we need to come up with a better solution to that, and they really haven't provided for one. And I have asked them, I've questioned them about this quite a bit, and they just say the same thing, is that, well, we can't be separating families. And I agree, I don't really like the idea of separating families either, but federal law restricts the ability for the U.S. government to hold children in detention, and their parents are not restricted in length of detention, and so the children are going to have to leave detention while their parents don't. And a lot of times their parents are deported years before their children are, and we're going to have to figure out how we really want to do this. So all the Democratic candidates, I would really appreciate if you come up with a better solution, because just saying you're not going to separate the children and let them all in, you're not helping any of these people out, because there's still going to be a finite amount of resources that all these people have to divvy out among themselves, and as more of them come in, there's going to be less resources to go around. So we need to work harder about preventing illegal crossings. Also going to have to make it towards more fair. It's not fair for someone from Mexico or Guatemala or Honduras or Ecuador or Chile to walk up into the United States and claim, I'm here, I want to live here, but we don't allow the same privileges to anyone in Africa, anyone in Southeast Asia, even people in Europe, and people, anywhere. We only seem to allow this to be done with people from South America, and we quota out people from mainland China and from India, and that, I believe, is very, very unfair. If we're going to tell everyone in South America, you get here, we'll let you stay, but tell Indians and Chinese people from Africa that they won't. And that's basically what we're telling them in the way we're doing this. And I've asked Democrats this several times, and they have yet to come up with a solution to me. But I do ask really technical questions. The next thing I'm talking to you about is education. Now, with the exception of Amy Klobuchar, they've all pretty much say they want to do free education, junior college and four-year university. How they have plan to pay for it is all based on removing the Trump tax cuts and expanding taxes for the wealthiest 1%. Again, I want you to take notice. If you would take every dime and every penny from everyone who is in that top 1% and divvy it out to every single individual in the United States over 18, it's about $2,500. That's it, and then it's gone. $2,500. This figure was come up by CNBC in 2009 at the towards the tail end of the 2008 Great Recession. Nicole Lapin, I believe, is the person who first talked about it, and Maria Bartiromo, who was currently with Fox Business, who was with Bloomberg News, and before the CNBC, also talked about this. That's a really small amount of money each individual would get if you took away everyone's money at the top and redistributed it out. So we're going to have to do a little bit better job with this. And I talked to the candidate. Here's the thing. In Iowa, for example, we have a 91.4% high school graduation rate. It's the #1 graduation rate for high schoolers in the country. But when it goes to four-year colleges and even some junior colleges, we drop way down. We actually graduate less than 30% of all of our students into four-year universities. Now, the spread, I think we're like somewhere in the 40s in the percentile. Now, the spread between 1 and 43 is where I think we are. It's all 1 below 30% graduation completion, and that spreads out very far between the highest graduation rate for college universities and where we are in Iowa. It's very, very low. Problem with this, a lot of people are getting to college. Getting into college is not the hardest part about it. It's being able to stay in college. It's about being able to actually achieve your academic ambitions in college. And this is where a lot of students fall short, especially in that sophomore year. I went to the University of Iowa, and in the sophomore year, a lot of people I started going to school with had since dropped out due to a variety of reasons. The #1, it's your first time you're actually kind of independent but not self-supportive financially, and there's a lot of skills, a lot of soft skills. And me being an autistic person with Asperger's, it was really tough. I can't begin to tell you all the struggles I've had in college, and those struggles still keep with me today because the Asperger's doesn't go away, the autism doesn't go away. It's still here, and those same problems are just affecting me. I'm just really stubborn. But these problems affect some students in ways where they're not able to complete college because they're just kind of wandering around without actually any direction, and they just end up getting thrown out for lack of academic progress. And so, especially with some of the minority students who come from backgrounds where they don't really have the education or the soft skills to strive. It's not just about academic knowledge. It's about ability to maneuver through the situation of being kind of on your own, dealing with adversity that you haven't dealt with before. It's very tough. Athletes, by the way, over 90%. Regardless of race, background, religion, economics, anything. People who perform athletics at a collegiate level have a graduation rate that's well above 90%. So maybe we should address that single issue. But this is something that when I asked Bernie Sanders about this at an Indianola event, he said, I really want to talk to him more about this, and then he avoided it. Then another person said, actually, I'm going to skip my question and ask that question again. How are we going to address the fact that it's not just about giving people free college, but about making sure they have the skills to be successful in college? He avoided the question a second time. Then a news outlet asked him the same question, and he just walked away. Honestly, I like Bernie Sanders. I've hung with him several times. I've hung out with all of his surrogates as well. There's not a single person running for president on the Republican or Democratic side that I don't like. I might not agree with all their policies, but I would call all of these people a friend. I've worked with several of them at the federal level as far as getting legislation done through there. Amy Klobuchar is actually a really good lead for a lot of legislation, and Joni Ernst and Elizabeth Warren have passed a lot of bipartisan bills together. Klobuchar works a lot with Roy Blunt from Missouri. There's a lot of bipartisanship within this crowd, even Bernie Sanders. When Bernie Sanders first came into the U.S. Senate, a lot of people thought he was going to be this huge, ruffle the feathers type of guy. And the first thing everyone said was, yeah, you're really easy to work with. He's known for being a big compromiser. Him and Ted Cruz were like best friends. So the idea that he's going to be some revolutionary is just not accurate. I do believe he would be really quick to compromise with whoever he could to get some of the things he wants done. And I do think that with proper debate and discussion and an exchange of ideas, a lot of the stuff they're talking about are serious issues that we need to address. I believe that because of the way everything else works, that some of their approaches may not be the most appropriate or the most successful. But these are issues that we need to seriously address. The fact that college costs so much, millions of dollars, when many of these universities have millions, in some cases $1 billion or so, money in endowments, which means they have this money to spend on whatever they want to, college just shouldn't be that expensive. It shouldn't. The fact that some of these doctors are paying off hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of student loan debt, and then they have to charge so much money to cover that student loan debt, and then their insurance premiums for their insurance they have to have as a medical practicing doctor is so high. They have to compensate for that. They have to compensate. Most of them do live in larger cities, so they have to compensate for that. There's the cost of becoming a doctor, the barriers of becoming a doctor. In fact, a lot of the doctors from China and India, which are very good by the way, can't come here because we quota them out as far as helping, especially rural areas. So we're not helping ourselves with that either. A lot of our approaches as a country, we have demonetized into these single little red pill issues. Well, this one little red pill, this one little blue pill, green pill can solve this whole segment of our society. It's a fallacy. It's not how it works. And we need to actually have Republicans and Democrats sit down and say, well, we agree to these issues. And they do have a large, agreement on these issues, but they've become so partisan that they won't admit to it where they have similar needs of accomplishing something and then call the other person names. This isn't helpful. But the big things that people are talking about, they don't address how free education is going to help people graduate. Just getting to college isn't going to get you a good degree. How they want to fund for the healthcare system and the Medicare for all, they can't force a doctor to take it. So they can snap your fingers and give everyone healthcare, but they can't provide a provider, and they can't force providers that do exist. They can't force them to cover you. They just can't. They can't do it in Medicare either. The current system, which is Medicare, is the largest healthcare system in the world, and they can't force doctors to accept it as insurance. They can't force doctors to accept Medicaid either. What would happen in this scenario is that there would be a key segment of the population as medical professionals that would only accept cash options, which means you'd have to prepay or give them a promise to them a cash amount in advance before they would see you. This is just what would happen. With the education, you would see that they offered all these free schools. You would see the charter school system create itself out of that for that higher education system. You just would. It's just human nature to try to protect what little you do have, and even if it's a lot compared to someone else, it's for someone else to look, we have a lot compared to other people. It's not that much, and so it's just human nature. We should stop trying to fight that and find a way to work around it, because I don't think people go out every day wanting to stomp on the little guy. They want to take care of their own families though, and they're going to do everything they can to make sure their own families are provided for. It's once we create that stability for each individual that they're going to start finding ways to help their fellow neighbors. And that's how we should address a lot of these issues, is let's make sure we can make as many people financially, economically, and medically stable as possible. And then those who cannot do it on their own, then we can address those problems. I think we have a much smaller population who's going to need a lot of that assistance for doing all these massive red pill or blue pill solutions, which just don't work. So as far as all the candidates are concerned, the nicest one to hang out with, Warren is really, really fun to hang out with. She's always super excited. She likes to dance. I don't mind her dancing. I wish more candidates would dance. As far as the most practical minded person, I think it's Amy Klobuchar. Her and I have had some really, really cool discussions, and the thing I will say about Amy Klobuchar is that several people changed from Klobuchar to someone else because her general staff, they felt cold to her. They felt cold to people. I haven't had that experience, but I had also seen them like 1,000 times. And I actually think that her state director was probably one of the better ones in running a race. Her and the person running the Warren state director for Warren, those two ladies actually did an amazing job, and I really applaud them for all the hard work they did. As far as going into the staff with other candidates, the ones who dropped out, minus Booker and Swalwell, staffs were not very pleasant to deal with at all. Zero. Absolutely worst people to talk to and deal with in this whole cycle, with the exception of Swalwell and Booker. Their staff is actually quite pleasant. The other ones were absolutely miserable to have discussions with, and that's not an understatement. As far as Bernie Sanders is concerned, this guy believes in what he's talking about. It's not just rhetoric for him. He's fundamentally in the belief that what he's talking about will make the world a better place, at least the United States, and then in extension, the rest of the world a better place. Now, I think he's had these beliefs for a very, very, very long time, and some of the things that he's done in the Congress and the Senate, has gotten passed and it has succeeded, but there's a lot of things he talks about I just don't think has been thought through far enough or been challenged enough to where it could be in a working form. But this man believes in his work, and he's not arrogant, for one. A lot of people think he's very, very arrogant. He's not. He is a very nice person to talk to, but he is very, very busy. I have nothing bad to say about Bernie Sanders. I know a lot of people on the right, even in the middle, and even on the left, will don't by Bernie Sanders, he's a revolutionary. He wants to destroy everything. That's not his intention. He doesn't want to destroy or revolutionize. He wants to make sure that people at the very, very bottom aren't forgotten. He doesn't want there to be a surplus population in the United States. I commend that. I commend that we shouldn't be overlooking people and saying that they are, we have no way of helping them at all, because that's not a way to grow an economy. None of these candidates, however, really talk much about helping people that are disabled. Not at all. I asked them. So I'm not, what would I have to do with disability? None of them had an answer. None of them. Zero. Well, the housing, well, no, you can't. No, they had nothing. Uh, Boosting up their benefits. The only one who talked anything about boosting up benefits was Sanders. That was everybody. It was like $1,300. Everyone else kind of dodged it, and that was really deep into Sanders' his policies, is how he was going to bump up the payments on disability recipients and Social Security beneficiaries in general. He also, all of them kind of agree, but sort of the Republicans agree about removing the cap on Social Security payouts, the taxes that people pay in. So it's not different. I mean, even most Republicans agree they should do that. So I don't know. There's not really a policy debate there, but they all agree to it. They haven't done it, so that's telling you something, that they're using it as an issue to run campaigns on. As far as Pete Buttigieg is concerned, he's by far the most intelligent person running on the Democratic side. He's also the most overly educated person who's not an attorney, with degrees from Harvard and Oxford. He's worked in kind of the finance and Wall Street end. He's a naval intelligence officer. He's been a small mayor, but most of his elections he's run have been failures. He's ran for mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He was successfully reelected, but a lot of people in South Bend are not big fans. And he hasn't run and won a statewide election in Indiana. And a lot of people actually talk about how this whole process is just to, if he does somehow break out and can make a run for it, great. But a lot of people even on his staff have kind of mentioned that this is more towards running for the Indiana governor's mansion in a short while, and this is just kind of building up his prestige. As far as like Tom and Bloomberg, they're just in it for the worst possible things, and so I'm not going to support their initiatives on any of this stuff. And I hope that people realize that this is an issue, that they're not really running for president, they're running just to go against Donald Trump, and they don't have enough policy out to really be all that successful. There's no development of any policy whatsoever for either Bloomberg or Steyer. Klobuchar, I think, would have the most advantages of being a successful president, because she targets the things she knows she can get past, and she gets those done. And by getting that momentum going, she can build on some of the more difficult things to do, and she has done that. She actually was the big power broker in the government shutdown happened back in Obama's term. And so I really think that she would be a very, very effective president on the Democratic side. Joe Biden, God love that man. He's nice. His wife is super smart. Very, very witty. And he's had the establishment, leanings of the Democratic Party for quite some time. Going to his rallies, going to his events that I've been to, I was at the one where he yelled at that guy multiple times. I was at both of the guys, when he yelled at the Steyer supporter and yelled at the Warren supporter. I was at both of those events. He's very quick to get defensive, and he's the get real, man, no joke, it's no joke, get real, man, let's do push-ups. He rambled on to stuff that had nothing to do with the questions that anyone answered, and that was something that I was really disappointed on. Also, his staff and I were supposed to actually have a discussion on some very, very specific topics, and they never followed up on any of that, and his campaign is the only one that didn't. And so that's kind of a shame on your staff, Mr. Vice President, because you didn't follow through on that. And that would have been very, very beneficial if you would have followed up on that, because, as you are one of the front runners, that would be information that you would have been able to build up on and discuss. And by virtue of whoever wins the domination of the Democratic Party would go on to the national level and talk with Trump on these issues. And then you would have there's so much more you could do by having a policy discussion, and none of the front runners really would go much more past just the rhetoric. That's kind of with all of them, and that's sad, because there's a lot of things that they just didn't really want to discuss because it wasn't part of their flashy rhetoric. And I think that's a downfall through any of these candidates. If they're not going to be able to discuss issues that everyone agrees on but no one brings up, these things are going to stay out of the national dialect and national debate, and then they will never become policy or law for anyone. And I'm really disappointed in the candidates for not bringing up these issues, especially with people on fixed incomes more specifically. You know, I've tried multiple times. They just something they had never done any research on, and attempted to do no more research on it. I think you've all kind of failed on that initiative. But for everyone else, I hope this gives you a little bit of insight about what these candidates are like. As far as the one thing I want to stands out when it comes to automation, the fear of automation replacing jobs. One of the things I did discuss, and Buttigieg and Yang discussed, was taxing the robots, because it's still labor. They're still performing a labor. So my idea is basically to tax the labor from the robots, and you would tax the same way lawyers you tax on their labor, because a lawyer can bill you for more hours that they worked than are in a week, and you know, certain doctors, things can be billed for more hours than what they were actually involved in. So their taxation would be based on labor hour of work performed, and that could change not only how doctors do it, but lawyers. But you could tax the companies and factories that are using automation, and then by doing that, you would disincentivize using of robots and automation to displace American workers. So that's pretty much everything, guys. I kind of lumped it all into one, basically because there was so much to go over, and doing every single one of these candidates individually when most of the policies were all the same was just not going to work. Foreign policy is all basically the same. More free trade with China, more free trade with China, and they all did not agree with USMCA until after it was passed. I mean, their foreign policies have not been all that, I say, interesting. They all talk about not going to war, but they all want to go to war in certain places where we shouldn't have, and don't want to go to war where we probably really need to, which is right now is nowhere. But that's basically everyone. I know this was long, but I hope it was educational. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please feel free to put in the comments below. Have a good day.